let me take the book.
Yes, I have it too, but I don't find it.
Yeah. So the invention of God, which I have here, is a translation of, I think it's a translation of the French, and in French also it's l'invention de Dieu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
in Portuguese, the same.
Yeah, this is Portuguese. Yeah.
This is in Portuguese.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Good. Well,
But it was translated by French, l'invention de Dieu.
By who?
In French,
it was
the original book
the basis
was
of the translation.
to Portuguese, l'invention de Dieu.
Yes. Okay, good.
Yeah, good. Luis, welcome, Luis.
Thank you.
This is the book of Luis organization. Yeah.
Leave it a little higher. Una historia de Israel.
Yes, Judah.
History of Israel.
Yeah.
Good. Wonderful.
Yes, from Luis. Yeah. This is the
Giancarlo also has it in his hands.
Yeah. This is picture of
Samaria.
Samaria. Yeah.
Yeah.
The castle of my God
Ahab Palace.
But yeah.
Okay.
Ahab Palace. Yeah.
Ahab
Palace. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows this.
Can I show mine book?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Please. A new book. Yes, a new book.
Yes, about Asherah.
Angela, what is the title of your book?
From Asherah to Loru Hama.
Okay.
Loru Hama.
It's about the whole study around the goddess Asherah and in a decolonial feminine perspective.
Good.
Of course.
Well, the goddess Asherah, of course, is extraordinary. I mean, the evidence that we have there from Kuntilet Ajrut on Asherah.
Yes. Yeah.
Has put all of the Bible in a different light, of course. Yeah. So that's nice to see that there's a book out there. Good.
Yes.
Congratulations on your book.
Yes, it's my PhD.
It's your PhD
thesis.
Okay. Good.
Valerio. Yes, Kuntilet Ajrut changed the comprehension of the cult in Israel. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I think it. And the interesting thing about Kuntilet Ajrut, which I find interesting, is that it's actually a site that is connected with Samaria rather than Judah.
Yes.
So it's connected with the northern kingdom, and so because it also has the Adonai Yahweh of Samaria, Shomron.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting, and it also shows you, I think, that the connection between Adonai or Yahweh with Asherah supposes an identification between Yahweh and El, because Asherah is the consort of El, not of Baal. Yeah. He's the consort of El. So, and this fits in with the whole thing in northern Israel, where El and Yahweh are identified with one another, whereas Baal is always the outsider and the opponent of Yahweh.
Yeah. But can you think this because of the king in Judah, Yahweh, like where you see in Yesaiah, Yahweh as a king, and El is also a king. Yeah.
Sure. But I think that is quite, that is not the distinctive feature really here, because Baal also can claim kingship in Ugaritic myth. And this is, I think, divine kingship is a reflection on the religious level of the experience of human kingship. I think that in the Hebrew Bible, or in Israelite religion more generally, God becomes a king once the Israelites become familiar with the phenomenon of a king. Before he was a warrior, and from a warrior, a tribal warrior, he became a king. Once Saul, David, and Solomon, the whole experience of kingship was there.
Yeah, interesting. It's a late identification. Yeah.
No, I think the different political realities, also the reality of the Persian Empire, of course, are reflected in the religious imagination. And so the experience with an emperor in the Persian Empire makes Yahweh also a kind of emperor, and has contributed to the emerging monotheism of Israel religion.
Yeah, this was the question, one of the question last meeting, if the Judaism was inspired on an imperial project.
Well, I think the contribution of the Persians to Israelite religion is very important and huge, in fact. And you have the indirect influence. The indirect influence is simply the fact that the Israelites or the Judahites and the Sumerians experienced the power of the Persians and were under Persian rule, and started to think of their own God as though he were, the highest power on earth, or the highest power in the world, in the universe, and therefore compared him to a Persian emperor with all the angels as in-betweens between humans and a chain in between the highest power and humans on earth. But also, in a very more direct way, the Persians influenced Israelite religion because they perceived the Judeans, not only the inhabitants of Judah, but also those living in the diaspora, in Babylonia and in Egypt, in Samaria, as belonging to one people, one ethnic group. And I think that was a very important step that was made. That Judaism as a religion might still have to wait until the 2nd century BCE, but the fact that the Jews are seen as one ethnic group and having one common religion, that was a very important development.
Yeah, Carol, it was very new for me when you say in your book that also the Edomite worship the Yahweh and the Idumeans, in the late. This is very interesting,
Well, not all of the
not all, but
no, but you realize,
Tobias,
you realize, Ademar, that Idumea, the ancient Edom, was now also including parts that had formerly belonged to Judah. So Persian Judah is smaller than pre-exilic Judah. And Idumea includes parts of the pre-exilic Judah. So there were Judahites, or there were Yahwists, I should say, in the population of Idumea. And there was a temple. There is a reference to a temple of Yahweh in Idumea and in Makeda, in fact. Just like there was a temple of Yahweh in Elephantini, and there was also a sanctuary of Yahweh, of course, in Samaria. So these different provinces of the Persian Empire had a population that was, at least in part, worshipping the traditional God of Israel, Yahweh. And they had their own sanctuaries. And for the Persians who perceived this, who saw this, this was a reason to think of these people as one nation, divided over different provinces and also living in the diaspora. But in the perception of the Persians, one nation with one common religion, which was most visible, that common religion, in the festival calendar, in the ritual calendar observed by the different groups both in the diaspora and in Samaria and in Judah.
Yeah, thank you. So we have also start, but we can continue. So we will say welcome. Yeah. Primeiro em português, bem-vindos todos, todas, all welcome. Welcome, Karel, again, and you are very sympathetic and accessible. This is fantastic for us, yeah. And we hope to see you someday, and I don't know where, in Brazil or outside.
Recording in progress.
You know, Ademar, if there is a translation in Portuguese, I promise I come to Brazil.
Yeah. Well, I put this on note here now.
Okay, good. That's a promise.
Yeah, good. Now you find a good group here already, yeah. They will follow you, yeah.
Okay.
So Luis is here. Luis is a good teacher. The two Luis are here, and well, most of the Rogério are teacher too, and well, we are some. Let me see where is only to see here the people here. Luis, Agostinus, Angela, Douglas, Fabiano. In especial, eu quero saudar o Fabiano em português first. Sure. Ele está no hospital, fez uma cirurgia do pulmão. Ele tirou aí um nódulo cancerígeno e tá escutando, Fabiano? Talvez E ele não pode ligar a câmera e tal, né? Então, bem-vindo, eu quero saudar especialmente aqui o Fabiano. Fabiano is in hospital. He made a lung surgery.
Surgery.
Yeah. Surgery, yeah.
I wish him well.
Yes, he will hear you. So, Fidel, bem-vindo, Giancarlo, Giovanna, James, França, Lucas, Merlo, Marcela Dias, Márcio Oliveira, Marcos Bailão, está aqui, Bailão, a teacher too, Mateus Rocha. Bem-vindos, bem-vindas. Vamos começar, né? Well, you know, we have a big difficult with English, but we will try to do our best, yeah?
Sure. You do very well.
Yes, and Bailão will put the question more easier on the chat in Portuguese, more bigger, yeah, in English. I will try to read them, and so we is open. If people will ask and will comment, can do it, yeah.
Okay.
As you ask, yeah.
Yes.
Some questions are a little big, but we will help to try to summarize it, yeah.
Okay.
So. Então, pessoal, sejam à vontade, podem fazer perguntas ou comentários, só levante a mão aí ou podem falar, né? Então, tá aí, né? um pouco grande essa questão, primeiro em português, é mais ou menos consenso que os aquemênidas zoroastristas não impuseram sua religião nos reinos conquistados. No entanto, a inscrição de Behistun mostra um intenso culto a Ahura Mazda pelo império, onde todas as conquistas são atribuídas a ele. Tanto que Ahura Mazda é mencionado umas 80 vezes nesta inscrição lá de Behistun. Por que essa incongruência? Adorado, mas não divulgado ou imposto. Você explana isso nas páginas seguintes, mas é difícil compreender essa lógica, uma vez que a religião e poder do império andavam de mãos dadas. E, ou seja, é que agora tapou aqui ou seja, os persas apoiavam os cultos locais para que seus deuses abençoassem o rei e seus filhos. Assim está lá em Esdras e tal. Como você diz na página 198, 195. Então, os aquemênidas eram politeístas? Então, tem duas questões um pouco aqui, né? Have you read it in
Yes,
English?
I've read it, so I understand it. I understand.
Yeah,
I understand the question. Yes, it's an interesting question. I think that up to a point, the religious policy of the Persians was quite similar to the religious policy followed by the Babylonians and the Assyrians before them. People realized in the ancient world that there were many gods and that various peoples had their own gods. Perhaps these gods could be equaled, could be identified with one another. I mean, you have these lists that identify, that translate gods, the names of gods. But for the political emperors, it was important that, on the one hand, their subjects recognize their own god as the highest god. I mean, that was the god who was victorious. But on the other hand, they generally followed a policy where they allowed their subjects to worship their own gods. Now, it's interesting that in the Persian era, the name which the Judeans use to refer to their own God becomes the God of heaven. I mean, this is typically an expression that is used in the Persian period, the God of heaven, to refer to Adonai, the God of Israel. And I think that name is in a way a bow to the Persians. It's in recognition of the Persian perception of Ahura Mazda being the God of heaven. And suggesting that what they are doing, namely worshipping Adonai as the God of heaven, is their own form, their national form, if you wish, of paying tribute to the god of the Persians, Ahura Mazda.
Interesting,
yeah. Yes, I think the choice of the, I mean, think of the meaning of this typically Persian period designation of God, the God of heaven. It simply means the highest God, and the supreme God, the highest God. And so it leaves open the possibility, on purpose, I think, for other nations to identify their highest God with Adonai. I mean, it's a way of communication between these people. Now, it's true that the Persians, I mean, they're quite, well, you could say fanatical in their worship of Ahura Mazda, but they are polytheists in the sense that they do recognize the fact that other nations worship other gods, and not only a single god, but more than one in generally. So in this sense, you could say, yes, they are in practice polytheists. They do not deny the existence of other gods, even though for them Ahura Mazda is the only significant one. But in fact, the Behistun inscription that you mention here does refer to other gods as supporters of the Persian dynasty, so the Achaemenid dynasty. So we're on our way to monotheism in a sense, but we are not completely there.
Good, thank you. Então, pessoal, tá aberto. Se alguém quer fazer um comentário também, sempre aberto, né? Next question. If you want, somebody want to comment something, some question, open, yeah. So I will read it in Portuguese.
Okay, good. I
At
read
the
it
same
in
time,
English.
you can read it in English. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Quando você compara os textos de Esdras com as inscrições da estátua do sacerdote egípcio Ujarorestnet sobre a autorização do culto e a restauração dos santuários por Cambises II e o Dario I, como você diz, the account of the mission of Ezra has a high degree plausibility. Quer dizer, a missão de Ezra tem uma alta grau de plausibilidade. E aí, there is a parallel between the mission of Ezra and the mission of Uzra-Hedek. Tem um paralelo entre os dois sacerdotes, né? Isso é uma questão bem interessante, de fato, né? Podemos dizer, então, que Esdras e Neemias, principalmente Esdras, são mais históricos do que pensávamos?
Yes, we can. No, it's the interesting thing here is that the description of the mission of Ezra in the book of Ezra fits into a pattern. And the pattern that we see and that we observe also for Egypt is that the Persian emperors, or some of the Persian emperors, made a real effort to codify the religious laws of the nations that were under their command. This is happening in Egypt, and you see it in Ujarorestnet, but you also have references to people brought from Egypt to Persia in order to write down the laws of Egypt in such a way that there is law and order that can be controlled by the Persians. And more or less the same thing happens with Ezra. And I suppose this was at the initiative of Ezra, but it was with the authorization of the Persian emperor. So there is a parallel, and the parallel is part of a pattern of how the Persians were involved in establishing a written code for the religion of their subjects, fully respecting the diversity of their religions. So I would say, yes, the mission of Ezra is historical. I mean, there is no reason to doubt its historicity. I cannot actually precisely date it, and I am not entirely sure it was the name Ezra that should go with it, but that mission occurred, and why not by Ezra? Yes, that seems one of the main facts of the Persian period, and one of the great events, in fact, of the of Israelite religion in the Persian period, in the post-exilic period. It's the beginning of the transformation of Israelite religion into a scriptural religion. it was very much a ritual religion, you might say, and it becomes more a scriptural religion because the book of the law, the Sefer HaTorah, which Ezra brought to Judah and Samaria.
Interesting, yeah. And this statue, this of the priest Horus is in the Vatican Museum, yeah.
It's in the Vatican Museum. Yes. Actually, there's a picture in the book of the statue.
Yes, as to say, yes. So we have here now a reason to visit the Vatican.
Oh well, you have many reasons to visit the Vatican, I'm sure. It's interesting. Yes, it's in the Vatican. Yes,
yeah. This was new for me too. Yeah, I think this is very. Yes, this one. Yeah. And the readings are on his clothes. Yeah.
Yes. It's a wonderful text. It's
fantastic.
It's quite amazing.
O pessoal está acompanhando, está conseguindo acompanhar aí mais ou menos? Sobre o paralelo, né, do sacerdote egípcio com o Esdras, que que ele fundamenta a historicidade do Esdras. So, can we go ahead?
Sure.
Thank you. This is very interesting, yeah. But I think there are more questions about Esdras here, yeah.
Okay.
Let me see.
Marcos, ok.
Então, se você coloca tanta confiança nas informações de Esdras e Neemias, a volta dos exilados e a reconstrução de Jerusalém, o que dizer do vazio arqueológico do período persa? Ou seja, que a arqueologia não tem encontrado evidências materiais. Israel, I think he worked a lot of this, and he worked at his book, Asmonean Reality, behind Esdras and Nehemiah's, no? And they say that the walls are of Nehemiah's are
from a later period.
Late period, late period, Asmonean, the walls are Asmoneans, yeah. Deu para entender, pessoal, né? Deu, né?
Yeah.
Yes, excuse me, with Luis and the group we have been in Jerusalem, and on this excavation on the new excavation there, and the archeologist who excavated that was our guide there.
Okay.
And he, good.
What was the name? What was the name?
I forget it.
Okay.
Yeah, there are two. I will find it later.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Well, no,
and excuse me, and he said, and he asked it, when we asked him about this, where are the signs here of the Persian period? And he could not find anything there for us. Yeah. Well, in this place at least, yes.
Givat Park.
Yeah.
Well, I'm familiar with this with these data from archaeology, of course. So what you have on the one hand is the biblical material. That's one thing. You have the comparative material, which includes the Uja-Horresnet statue, which we can date very precisely, and some other materials about the Persian period and the Persian policies, which makes the mission of Ezra a very plausible scenario, I would say. And what we also have is the textual history of the Pentateuch. And if you look at the textual history of the Pentateuch, which is a sacred book, both for the Samaritan community and for the Judean community, or the Jewish community, if you wish, it brings you back to a date of about 400 or 450 as the initial period. So you have these textual data and historical data and comparative data that makes the case for a mission of Ezra in the 5th century, at some point of the 5th century, to me, the most plausible scenario. Now, that doesn't mean that Jerusalem, in that time, in the Persian period, was a significant place. I mean, there are remains from the Persian period, as far as I know, but what they show is that it was a very minor place, certainly compared to Samaria. But that doesn't mean that these things did not happen. I mean, we have two types of evidence that do not mutually exclude one another. So it is true that the archaeological evidence shows us that we should be very cautious, that we should be attentive to the fact that things in Judah were in a sorry state. But this is also more or less what the picture that we get from the biblical sources about this period. You know, when the prophets speak about the second temple, or what is being built as the second temple, and people looking at it and say, well, it is nothing compared to what we had before. So I don't see this, I don't see the archaeological record or the archaeological discoveries of the Persian period as contradicting the fundamental likelihood of Ezra's mission. And I think the dating of Ezra's mission in the 5th century and the introduction of the Pentateuch around that time makes the best sense when you look at the textual history, both of the Pentateuch and the development of Israelite religion. And I point here too to the fact that, I mean, we have also this extra biblical evidence from Elephantini and the mission of Hananiah to Elephantini in 419, where he gives directives for the celebration of Matzot and Pesach. I mean, this is 419, and it's extra biblical, objective, so to speak, evidence that we have to take into account as well, and which corroborates basically the data about Ezra in the book of Ezra.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. I think we have to work on these things, yeah, more. Yeah. Good. Fantastic. Yeah. So there is a new question, Bailão, você quer apresentar? Do Giancarlo, parece que surgiu, vai colocar depois, Bailão? Depois então. I think the same question is related with
more or less the same question, but I think that yes, you can think of a later date. Podría pensar en una data más tardía.
Sí, tardía,
yes.
Yeah. Your Portuguese is better than my English.
No.
Good.
Only when I see it written. But yes, it's possible, and you know, we should consider it. But not everything is possible. I mean, I don't think you could go beyond the 4th century before, for example. And the reason I say this is, one, we have the schism, of course, between Samaritans and Judeans in, well, around 150. So in the 2nd century BCE. And there is the whole, it's a very complex history of the textual history of the Pentateuch. And that history of the Pentateuch is the history of at least 200 years of corrections and variations, and there are all minor things that occur over a long period of time. So it becomes very difficult, I think, to date the Pentateuch later than the 4th century. Now, I think, and I have laid out the evidence in answering the earlier questions, that it is more likely that we go for the 5th century, in view of different kinds of evidence, among which the Elephantini data. Think also of the fact of the nature of the Pentateuch. I mean, this is, I think, an important thing. The nature of the Pentateuch is very much that of a compromise document, bringing together traditions from different groups. There are a lot of contradictions, internal contradictions in the Pentateuch. When you read the Pentateuch and you say, well, God speaks with different voices apparently and contradicts himself if you take this as divinely inspired. If you look at it from a more human point of view, you could say, well, what is happening here is that traditions from different groups are brought together. No one is excluded, as far as we can see, and opposing views are simply brought together in a compilation that is put under the name of Moses, and that has become the Torah and the foundational document of Judaism and Samaritanism, and very important too, of course, for Christianity later. Now, I think the nature of the Pentateuch, bringing together different Yahwistic communities, fits very well with the Persian policy of treating the Jews in their empire, or the Judeans in their empire, as one ethnos, as one nation, and this as their foundational document. It's like the constitution of the Jews.
Yeah, this is right. Well, interesting. Yeah, thank you. Good. Go ahead.
Sure.
Many questions, Karel.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, a little time, yeah. Se alguém tem um comentário, seguimos, Bailão. Yeah, this is, I think, has to be with the question before, yeah. Você coloca o conflito com os samaritanos no princípio da reconstrução de Zorobabel, Neemias. Há quem coloca no final do século III. Antes era comum, no ambiente da destruição do templo de Garizim.
Yeah. Okay. Now, it's very important to make a distinction between Sumerians and Samaritans.
Yeah.
He really changes everything.
Yes.
So that is the first thing that I have to say, because I don't think there can be a conflict with Samaritans in the 5th century, because there are no Samaritans. There are Sumerians. There's two provinces, or those are the major provinces in Israel, and Samaria is a Persian province, and Judah is a Persian province. Now, what you see happening in the 5th century is that those who have returned from the Babylonian diaspora, or the Babylonian exile, if you wish, those returnees who call themselves the Bnei HaGolah, the sons of the Golah, the children of the Golah, regard themselves as the true people of Adonai, the true people of God. And they work with a very narrow and almost racial definition of the people of God, the holy race, they call themselves. Zera HaKodesh, the holy race. And when you read Ezra and Nehemiah, you find that, especially Nehemiah, not so much Ezra as a person, but Nehemiah thinks of the Sumerians, the population of the province of Samaria, even though they are worshippers of Adonai, of Yahweh. He thinks of them as foreigners, as non-Yahwists, as not the true Israel. So that conflict is the one between a narrow definition of who is Yehudim, who is a Jew or a Judean, and who is not. That is the narrow definition, and Nehemiah is a champion of the narrow definition. There is also the broad definition, and I think Ezra is a champion of the broad definition, and the Persians are a champion of the broad definition. To the Persians, who are basically supporting the mission of Ezra, to the Persians, all those worshipping Adonai, whether they live in the diaspora, in Babylonia, in the east, or in Egypt, like in Elephantine and other places in Egypt, whether they live in Samaria or Idumea or Judah, they are all part of the Jews or the Judeans, whatever you wish. Not just the inhabitants of the province of Judah, but a much broader group. And that broader definition has, in the end, carried the day, has won, has been triumphant. Now, Samaritans, I think, the divide between Samaritans and Jews, I would place not in the 3rd century, but in the 2nd century under the Hasmoneans. That is where you get the divide between Jews and Samaritans. And that is also the time of the destruction of the sanctuary. I would call it the sanctuary on Mount Gerizim because it's not really a temple. I think it's an open air sanctuary that you have. Yeah. And I think that occurs in the 2nd century, and that is the time where, well, the ways part between Samaritans on the one hand and Judeans on the other. Before that time, Sumerians, there's a huge Yahwistic population in Samaria. And if you look at the archaeological evidence on Samaria, for instance, the inscriptions that you found around Mount Gerizim, but also in the Wadi Dalia papers, papyri, all Yahwistic names and reference to Yahweh, not to other gods. I mean, those are Yahwist. And the population of Elephantine knew this. I mean, when their temple was in ruins and they asked for support to get permission to rebuild their temple, they wrote to Jerusalem, to Judah, but they wrote also to Samaria. And they had the joint support of both the governor of Samaria and the governor of Jerusalem in their file that they submitted to the Persians in order to get permission to rebuild their temple. So Samaria was an important Yahwistic center too. And things changed only in the 2nd century when Judaism really began to separate itself from the Samaritans. And, they went their separate ways, and you had your own Samaritan diaspora and your Jewish diaspora.
Yeah, thank you. Eu vou explicar pouquinho em português, aí ele pode descansar pouquinho, né, para o pessoal entender. You can rest a little bit, I will explain it in Portuguese a little. Yeah, good. Good. Colocando a diferença entre samarianos e samaritanos. Que não há conflito, mas assim, os samarianos também eram javistas e é muito forte o templo lá em Samaria, né, em Gerizim. Templo não um santuário aberto, né? E o conflito só se torna mais forte de fato depois, no 2º século, quando são definidos como samaritanos. Let's go the next, please.
Professor, mas esse conflito esse conflito que ele coloca não seria, se aparece no livro de Neemias, não seria um indício que esse texto é mais tardio, porque ele retroprojeta para o período anterior, porque se os samaritanos estão lá na frente e aparece esse conflito no texto com os samaritanos, não seria um indício de que esse texto é mais tardio do que ele está falando do período persa?
Yeah, Rogério said that in Nehemiah's they put the text as it was in the 4th or in the 5th century, the conflict with Samaritans. So he will say that the text is later than the conflict he put there. You understand it? Yeah.
I think I understand it, but I don't agree.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
You think the text is, yeah, please.
Well, dating the text is one thing, of course, but I think that the various references to persons, that are named, that are that are called by their own names, makes it clear that on the one hand, there are strong interactions, cultural and political interactions between the population and certainly also the leadership of Samaria and Jerusalem, so Judah, but that there is also an important faction, group within Judah, a specific group that Nehemiah is one of the leading figures in, that is opposed to the participation of Sumerians in the cult of Yahweh or the rebuilding of the temple and all those things. And I find it difficult to post-date that really to the 4th or 3rd century or even later. Samaritans, as I say, that would bring you down to the 2nd century BCE, because before the 2nd century, there are no Samaritans. There are Sumerians, but no Samaritans. It's not really its own, the separation has not occurred yet. So I find it very difficult to read Nehemiah as the product of second century, which would mean that it would retroject back in the 5th century a conflict that is much later. It's an interesting idea, and I like you to develop it, Rogerio, because maybe maybe you're right. Who knows? But you still have to convince me.
Well, good. Thank you, Rogerio. Can you go ahead?
Sure.
Eu sei que estão aparecendo outras perguntas aí. Vamos, o Bailão que comanda aí o pedaço, por favor.
Well,
aqui já está aqui. Que evidências da influência persa nas estruturas religiosas judaicas como ser identificadas na organização do sacerdócio, na teologia angelológica e na implementação da Torá como lei? Can you understand it?
Yeah, Theologia Angelologica.
Yeah.
That's a difficult thing. But yes.
The priesthood is interesting here, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't see. Now, I would be able to point out that, yes, it is true that there is an influence in the perception of the angels. So it's true that something significant changes in the Persian period when it comes to the angelology. I hate that term. It's very difficult to pronounce. But people what you see in the Persian period is a multiplication of angels. There were angels before the Persian period, of course. I mean, also in pre-exilic Israel, in the literature, we find references to heavenly messengers. But it is true that in the Persian period, you get thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of angels. And I think that is related to a monotheistic development in which the God of Israel becomes the God of heaven, the highest God, and is thought of as an emperor in the likeness of a Persian emperor, and all the other gods are demoted, brought down to the position of angels. He cannot suffer other gods around him. They are all lower figures, so they become angels, and they become angels in a chain between human beings on earth and the highest power in heaven. So yes, there is clearly an influence of the Persian Empire. The implementation of Torah as law is also an interesting case. We've discussed the mission of Ezra. I'm not going back there. But what I do want to point out, and this is a very interesting thing to me, is the concept of the law of the king, an expression that you find in the book of Ezra. And that is an expression that translates an Akkadian expression that we find, the Datu Shashari. And Datu, the word Dat, is a Persian term. Dat is a Persian term and means law. In modern Hebrew, Dat means religion. I mean, so the Persian word has entered the Hebrew language and has become the word for religion.
Yes.
Now, the Datu Shashari is a written law. It cannot be changed, and it has to be obeyed as written. And this is a concept, it's a Persian concept, it's a Persian concept from the sphere of royal law that has been used and projected upon the law of Ezra, the Torah of Ezra, which is the Torah, the Sefer HaTorah. And this is one of the reasons why you find constantly in Ezra and Nehemiah, but also in Chronicles, for instance, that things are being performed as it is written. So this echoes a very Persian concept, which you find in cuneiform text, in fact, from the Persian period in Babylonia, the Datu Sharu, so the law of the king. Data di Malka in Ezra, and that is the written law, unchangeable, forever to be obeyed as it is written. Now, the priesthood, that is the third element, and that is the first element in the question, there I find it more difficult to see any Persian influence. What you see happening.
Excuse me, Karel, I forgot, I've lost this. What's more difficult?
Well, the question asks about Persian influence on three subjects.
Yeah.
The theology of angels, angelological theology, the implementation of Torah as law. Well, in those two issues, I do see Persian influence, but it also asks about the organization of the priesthood.
Yeah, good. This, yeah.
There I find it difficult to pinpoint Persian influence. Maybe you are thinking of something. That's possible. I would be interested to hear your idea about this. What I would say is one of the things that is happening in the Persian period, and that is an important development that will have implications for the rest of the history of Israelite religion, is that the priesthood, and especially the high priest, becomes more of a political figure. I mean to say that the high priest is there is no longer an Israelite king, and the high priest in a way becomes the Israelite king. or fills that position. I mean, he's not referred to as a king, but it's very close. And here there is the evidence of Elephantini, which is also interesting, where the leader of the community, Jedania, usually does not refer to himself as priest, but in the letter to Jerusalem and Samaria, he does refer to himself as the priest, and he considers himself the high priest of the community, but he's also the political leader of the community. And that is something that you do not find, of course, in the pre-exilic period. But I'm not sure this is Persian influence. It seems more like a development. There is a vacuum because there is no king, so the high priest steps in.
Good, very good. I think this was Rogério's question, yeah, Rogério? A tua questão? Não?
Não, não foi minha, não.
Não.
Né?
No.
Mas,
Well, good. Next. Please, next. Bailãozinho. Oh, this is a complex question, yeah? Oh my gosh. So, sobre a identificação da palavra de Deus, God's word God, of God, com texto escrito, with written text, this is the question, yeah? Essa identificação teria começado já com Josias e o livro da aliança? Teria sido reforçado com a promulgação do Pentateuco como lei de Deus e lei do rei, com Esdras? E uma vez que esses textos estavam funcionando como escritos oficiais, legitimando o rei ou o imperador, quais são os cuidados que devemos ter com as teologias da revelação? Uau! Da inspiração que muitas vezes nos reforçam a identificação do texto escrito com a palavra de Deus. A questão é a palavra de Deus e o texto escrito. Oh, isso parece uma questão do Luiz Dietrich, mas não sei, não. Acho que é do Mateus Troik. É do
Luis José Dietrich. Yeah, it's a very good question.
Yeah.
It's a very intelligent question, of course.
Yeah.
So I think there is a development there is an important development under King Josiah. And that is indeed the Book of the Covenant, the discovery of the Book of the Covenant, which, in my view, and in the view of many others, of course, is to be identified with the central message of Deuteronomy, not all of Deuteronomy as we know it now, but the centerpiece of Deuteronomy, the old kernel of Deuteronomy was the Book of the Covenant. But I do agree here with Louise that what you see happening there is, and this is so we're talking about 620 BCE, and this is still before the exile. But there is something happening here, and that is that a written text, a book, which is a pseudepigraph because it was discovered, but it was in fact produced in that time. But that written text has greater authority than the oral tradition, which is a very interesting thing to see, because up to that point, it was the oral tradition that decided about these things. The oral tradition, from one generation to the next generation of priests. And what is happening now under Josiah is that a book, a written text, a scroll, is found, consulted, and corrects the oral tradition. This is a very important and significant development in Israelite religion. And you see it reflected also in the story of Ezekiel's calling. You have this, it's a wonderful story, and I think it's Ezekiel 3. It's not at the very beginning of the book of Ezekiel, but a little later. And you may recall this. He has a vision, and in that vision, he is given a scroll to eat, a written text to eat. And he eats it, and it tastes like honey. And that is the book, actually. It's the book of Ezekiel that he eats, and that he then starts to speak. Now, this is, I think, very interesting. So this is the exilic period. I mean, I basically accept that Ezekiel should be placed, or most of Ezekiel should be placed in the 6th century in Babylonia. And so this concept that you have of the authority of a written text, greater authority than the oral text, is also reflected in Ezekiel, where the prophetic calling is not simply an oral message, but a written text that he ingests and that he then begins to speak. And so this is a longer development. And what Ezra does is, or what the mission of Ezra brings, is an amplified version of that, because the Torah, the Pentateuch, and I think that basically what Ezra brings, the law of God that is in the hand of Ezra, is the Pentateuch. But it is another stage in this process where the divine communication is codified in a written text, which also fits very well the whole Persian conception of things. I mean, this is what the Persians wanted. They wanted to codify the religious traditions of the peoples in their empire so that they could exercise some control over it. But it basically, it's important to see that it stands in a line where you have the law of Josiah, the book of the law of Josiah, the ingestion of a written text by Ezekiel, and then the law of God, the law of the king of Ezra. I am not sure that all these texts are legitimizing the king or the emperor. I don't think that is the main point of these texts. And I'm not sure that I understand the second part of the question about precautions, cuidados, that we have to take with the theologies of revelation and inspiration. So maybe you can enlighten me here what you mean by that.
I think he will say that this text, difficult to understand that as God's word, yeah. So a reading word, and then a sacred text, something like that. Yeah.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah, you do. God sent it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the legitimation thing, and I don't believe it, but I mean, I see the human construction here at work, but that is also true for many of these things. I mean, in the time of the monarchy, the basic idea is that the king is a son of God and has been appointed and consecrated by God, and that basically is a means to legitimize the king, indeed, and without a text. I mean, it's just a ritual legitimacy of the king. Well, we are not persuaded by that. Neither am I persuaded by the divine nature of the Torah. I mean, I regard it as a human document that was later that is presented as Word of God. I think it would be dangerous to take it literally as the Word of God.
Well,
Thank you.
good.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Next. Well, this is a
That's a good question. It's very short.
yeah.
It's a very good question, in fact. Also, what happens here is that so originally, of course, Judah and Israel are two different parts. I mean, Israel is the northern kingdom, Judah is the southern kingdom, and they are separate. And Israel is Israel, and Judah is Judah, and that's it. Now, what happens around 720? The Neo-Assyrian army come to Samaria and occupy Samaria and turn the northern kingdom, Israel, into an Assyrian province. This happens in two phases, 722 and 720. So that's still in the period of the monarchy. Now, what happens then is that part of the population of Samaria, of the Assyrian province of Samaria, migrates to Judah. And archaeologically, I'm sure, Adamar, that you know this because Finkelstein has published quite a bit on this. What you see happening around 700 is a growth in the size of Jerusalem and also new settlements in Judah. And the most probable explanation for that is that people from the province of Samaria have moved to Judah, to Jerusalem, where they inhabit in the new quarter. So, in fact, there is a Sumerian diaspora in Judah. I mean, people don't often speak about this, but it's an important historical phenomenon, and a Sumerian diaspora in Judah, because this explains a lot of things in the development of Israelite religion. You have prophetic books that originated in Israel, in the northern kingdom, like Hosea and Amos, that have entered the Bible of Judah. I mean, that entered the religious tradition of Judah. So they have been brought there to Judah by Sumerian refugees after 720 BCE. And this also explains why Judeans or Judahites could refer to themselves at some point as Israelites. They would never have done this before. But once Israel as a political entity has ceased to exist and has become the province of Samaria, and parts of the population had fled to Judah, the inheritance of the Yahwists of Samaria became part of the tradition of Judah. And this is why such terms as Judah, but also Joseph and other northern terms, and also certain specific northern tenets like the Exodus tradition. The Exodus tradition is a northern tradition originally, but becomes part of the religious heritage of Judah. So Judah became Israel because of the Sumerian diaspora after 720.
Interesting, yeah. Could this be an influence? Could these people who fled to Jerusalem influence the revolution of Ezekias in 704 against Assyrian because they lost Samarian?
I
don't know if you wrote about this, but
no, that I don't know, because that would be very soon. But I do believe that we spoke about King Josiah and the reforms of King Josiah. I do believe that Deuteronomy, in fact, is has been written by descendants of the Sumerian diaspora. Also in view, for instance, of Gerizim in the book of Deuteronomy. I mean, Deuteronomy speaks about the one place that Adonai will choose as the legitimate temple, but leaves unclear what that place is actually. It doesn't mention Jerusalem. And in fact, the one place that is mentioned is Gerizim. So I think the influence of the Sumerians on the religion of Judah and on later Judean religion is huge. I'm not sure about the Assyrians in 701. I mean, that would be very early, and I think also that, you know, there is no reason for the Judean population itself not to resist the Assyrians.
Yeah. Good. Next, please. É correto usar o termo província de Judá, Yehud province, because the Ebir Nari, no, is a province. You use this term, yeah?
Yeah, Medina. Yeah, that's the term that is used. And no, you also find it outside the Bible in extra biblical documents. So yes, we can be sure that it was Judah had become a Persian province, and that is the right term. Yes. Just
Good.
like
Next.
the province of Samaria.
Yeah, two provinces. Yeah, Samarian province and the one is the big province.
Samarian is big. Yeah, certainly compared to Judah. Yeah, it's a small province, but it is.
Bir Nari is Syria and Palestine together. Yeah. Próximo. Havia resistência interna em Judá ao projeto persa? Parece que você não menciona esta possibilidade. Can you understand it?
Yeah. No, it's an interesting question. It's an interesting question because the resistance against Alexander and against the Greeks in the later period is very clear. I mean, read 1 Maccabees and 2 Maccabees, and it's clear that there is a resistance movement. But you don't have the impression that there is much resistance against the Persians. In fact, Deutero-Isaiah refers to Cyrus as the Mashiach, you know, the Messiah. And and you also see quite a number of Jews, even today, that carry names of Persian kings. I mean, Cyrus is still a popular name among modern Jews. There is a rather positive view that Judeans have taken of the Persians. And, well, understandably so, perhaps. I mean, the Persians did allow Judah to become a province. The Persians were involved in the repatriation of some of the deported Judeans from Babylonia to Judah. The Persians authorized the mission of Ezra. I mean, yeah, there is not much of internal resistance that I see happening against the Persian project in Judah. more resistance against the Sumerians than against the Persians.
At least in the Bible text, yeah.
Sure.
You cannot find it, yeah.
They didn't like the taxes, of course, but yeah, I mean, who likes
Good,
taxes?
thank you. Next. I don't have to work a lot. Oh, this is a question of Giovanna. O conceito filho do homem aparece por primeira vez na literatura bíblica tardia, Daniel 7, 13, 14, Ezequiel 2, 21, e apócrifa. Conceito que também Jesus usa para si, muitas vezes, inclusive. Você acha que esse conceito poderia ter influência persa? Good question. You understand it, yeah?
Yeah, I understand it. Well, I think that Son of Man in Ezekiel 2, verse 1, which is the second text mentioned here, is quite different from Daniel 7.
Correct. Yeah.
So Daniel 7 is 2nd century. Ezekiel 2, verse 1 is 6th century. So there's 4 centuries between those two texts. But it's you could say yes, it's post-exilic. Now, I think the concept is not Persian, and in fact, the fact that you find it in Ezekiel, where Ezekiel is addressed, the man Ezekiel is addressed as Son of Man, would show me that is more of an Aramaic expression than a Persian one, because this is before the Persian era. Ezekiel is before the Persian era. It's in the Babylonian exile. I think it's more of a language issue here. The expression Son of Man is quite common in Aramaic text. You also find it in the Amherst Papyrus, in fact. Amherst Papyrus 63, which we have not talked about yet, I believe, but which is a fascinating text from Egypt, Aramaic text, but written in demotic characters. But there also you find the notion of Son of Man a number of times. And it's simple. Well, the basic meaning is simply human being. That's what it means. But in later literature, it gets an extra dimension, so to speak, and certainly. When Jesus refers to himself as the Son of Man, yes, there is a reference to Daniel there, where the Son of Man becomes a savior figure. That is not originally part of that package. So there is a development in the whole use of the phrase, the expression, Son of Man, where it is a very common way of expressing a human being in Aramaic language. And then in due course develops the notion of a savior figure, and Daniel is a crucial episode in that development. And when Jesus uses the expression, he does refer, or I don't know if Jesus used the expression, but at least in the Gospels, it is ascribed to Jesus. And yes, the reference is to Daniel and to a savior figure. I don't think there's any Persian influence here.
Yep, good. Ahead.
Okay, let's go to the last one.
Oh.
The last one. Okay, good.
The last one. Where? Here.
Are you in a library, Marcos?
No, in my house.
because what I see at your back, I mean, it seems like titles from a library.
No.
Those books.
Oh, it's in my house.
It's in your house. Okay,
My
good.
home office.
Okay, good.
O judaísmo se formou sob a influência do imaginário religioso persa aquemênida, ethnic religion. Yeah? Você acha que esta máxima vai orientar a pesquisa futura na Bíblia do período pós-exílico? I think he translated twice, yeah?
Yeah, I see. Yeah. Yeah.
Because, Carol,
Yeah,
these
no,
most things are new, yeah?
No, I think it's also an interesting question. What I see happening in the Persian period, and I think you can demonstrate that is what that is actually happening, is that there is a formation of the Jewish nation, which comes from partly the diaspora experience. What you see happening in the Persian period is that there are Judeans and Sumerians, worshippers of Yahweh, living in different parts and spread over the empire. And one of the effects of the diaspora experience is that people from different local traditions and local origins come together, find themselves together as neighbors, and discover that they belong to a common people. The discovery of ethnicity, of belonging to one people, to one ethnos, is part of the diaspora experience. And the Persians have reinforced this in a way because of their policy of looking at the Judeans, what they call the Judeans, as members of one nation, of one ethnic group. And it is true that that ethnic group also has a common religion, or is supposed to have a common religion. So yes, I think that ethnic religion is coming into existence in the Persian period, and also under the influence of the Persian policy towards the Judeans. Now, will this maxim guide future research on the Bible from the post-exilic period? I hope so. It would be good. Because I know the argument, of course, that you cannot speak about Jews before the 2nd century BCE because there is Judaism as a religion with all the precepts and laws that we know, that we associate with that religion, only came into being under the Hasmonean dynasty, which brings you to the 2nd century BCE. But I think that the development where the Judeans, including the Sumerians, are one nation in different parts of the empire, and also have one religion, which has not developed yet the form that it will develop in the 2nd century, is happening in the Persian period, and that Israelite religion indeed becomes ethnic religion in the Persian period. And well, that is a development that future studies of the Hebrew Bible and of Israelite religion should take into account. Yes, I'm sure.
Yeah, good, interesting. I think we have, as you say, we have to introduce more. I'm talking about us, yeah. You have to introduce more the diaspora reality in the Persian study. Yeah, this is interesting.
True.
Yeah. So, sorry, but we have finished. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
No, Ademar, tem
Oi.
duas perguntas no chat do Zoom. O Bailão disse que não consegue ver. Quem está vendo ali talvez seja o Rossi. Lá tem uma anterior e eu fiz mais uma ali, não sei. Tem uma que estava
Você
ali antes
consegue
de
ler
mim,
aí?
do
Rossi, dá uma olhada, onde
Giancarlo.
é que tá?
Eu passei no WhatsApp para o Bailão, o conteúdo das duas. Se ele puder subir aí. É só copiar e colar, Bailão, ver se consegue.
Deixa eu dar uma olhada aqui, assim, o que tem aqui no chat, deixa eu ver. Ah, aqui tem. There are 2 questions more. People send it, yeah.
Okay.
The one is changing, well, first the other
Não,
one. We
começa
assume
com a
that-
anterior. A anterior do
Sim,
Giancarlo
sim.
estava aí antes que a minha.
Sim, então. We assume that he, like Nehemiah, was a man of 2 words. Words. That is to say, while he was at the forefront of the post-exile society, he also ensured that the interests of the Persian Empire were executed and obeyed. You know, that Nehemiah was a Persian guy, well, to defend the Persian interest, and also the Jewish interest, yeah. With 2 fronts, he put it, yeah. In 2 words. You can understand it.
I think Carol could read this question in the chat of the Zoom, yes?
Yeah,
No,
if you put
no. It wasn't there. But
In the chat.
Oh, in the chat. Oh, perhaps.
Chat, yes.
Yeah.
I will
Put
have
chat, yeah.
Oh,
Chat, yeah.
I see. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
There's
Two last message.
Yeah.
I see. Beginning with the premise of the historicity of Ezra, can we assume that he, like Nehemiah, was a man of 2 worlds? As he was a reformer, the interest of the Persian. Yes. This is true both for Nehemiah and for Ezra. And well, those figures are quite different, actually. So Nehemiah was, of course, more a political figure than Ezra was. And Nehemiah certainly, but both came with the authority of the Persian emperor and serving the interest of the Persian emperor, but with a slightly different objective. So Nehemiah was, well, officially to restore much of the province of Judah and the city of Jerusalem, rebuilding the walls, etc. That was a Persian interest because, well, a functioning province would also raise contributions for the Persians, and it was also an important province on the way to Egypt. Ezra has a slightly different purpose, of course, but the Persian interest there was the unification of the Yahwist, not only in Samaria but also in the province of Samaria. Not only in Judah, but also in the province of Samaria and elsewhere. So yes, both they were men of 2 worlds, if you wish. They had 2 objectives. True. Second question was, segunda pregunta. Is that also in the chat?
Yes, it's the last one, I think.
Oh, this is
the last message.
Change epics.
Yeah, this is the question of Luis. Yes.
Messer Stele.
Yeah, the Messer Stele, which is a fascinating document, and which is a fascinating document and is important because it's the first mention of Adonai in an extra biblical text. So and it's written as a tetragrammaton with the four letters that we know that the divine name was written. I think what you see there indeed is that it recognizes, by a Moabite king, that Adonai, who we refer to as Adonai, they would pronounce his name probably as Yahweh, like they did at Elephantine later, and like they did in Babylonia, where they speak about Yahoo. That's very similar. But that Yahweh, Adonai, was indeed the national deity of Israel, just like Chemosh was the national deity of Moab and the Moabites, which means that he also was the deity of the army, the leading figure of the army. If you defeated the Israelite army, you defeated Yahweh. And the Mishnah Stele speaks about that, and by mentioning the implements of different Yahwistic sanctuaries in the Transjordanian territory to Moab. So yes, I agree. It's national God and God of the army.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
good. There are some questions more? Bailão, Rossi, vocês apareceram aí? So, Carol, we thank so much to you for this time with us, and we learned a lot.
Recording stopped.
We have not read your whole book, but what we read, especially the capital chapter 5, yeah, very interesting. And we will have the seminar now.
Okay.
22 to 24 here in our university about this thema, this data, yeah.
Good.
And with Gad Barnea will stay here, and I think this was a very good introduction for us.
Okay, good.
A fantastic introduction. Yeah. And
well, thanks so much.
So, and we will see you here in Brazil.
If there is a translation, huh? Yeah.
After translation, yeah.
After translation, yeah. Okay, thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you, Professor.
Graduation.